our showrunner from Generation Q, Marja-Lewis Ryan. We got her booked for the show.
Yeah, we booked her and said, can you answer questions just from the fans?
If you haven't heard yet, the showrunner for the L Word Generation Q went on the Pants podcast, hosted by Kate Minig and Leisha Haley. And it did not go well. Obviously, Marja should have been honest up front instead of ruining the L-Word legacy. Why the did they name her showrunner? This lady is in way over her head. No, literally, they need a new showrunner. If she's the reason why we don't get a season 3, I'm gonna lose my mind. I tried. It's not working for us. New showrunner, please. Girl that asked why the characters don't have fun anymore, you're my hero. Honestly, that's not even a fraction of the amount of hate Marja-Lewis is getting from this interview online. This interview is like the time I got really drunk and thought it would help if I ate a bunch of candy. But why are fans so upset? What was it Marja-Lewis Ryan said that caught people's attention? We're about to find out. Buckle up. This is a deep dive on the Pants Podcast interview with Marja-Lewis Ryan, the showrunner of the L Word Generation Q. One question I've seen popping up online about this interview is whether Kate and Leisha kind of lesbian mafia orchestrated this as a sort of sacrifice.
Here's what you're gonna do, Marja. You're gonna go down to the station. You're gonna take all of the heat for season 2 of the show. You're gonna go down to the lesbians. You're gonna take all the heat.
I think what people are asking is, do Kate and Leisha maybe share some of the fans' sentiments about season 2? And was this perhaps an attempt to exonerate themselves as maybe executive producers in name only? Well, as far as whether they were aware this outcome could be a possibility with the interview, that's what we're here to find out.
I am the head writer. Each writer is kind of in charge of like one storyline per episode. And then it's my job to kind of like take all of that together and like make it a cohesive episode.
If I'm her, I'm maybe not using that word. Because one of the biggest complaints the fans have had this year is about the lack of cohesion. She basically started out the interview like, hey guys, it's me. It was me. I f***ed it up.
Do you ever get to a point where you get overwhelmed and you have to sort of pass on some responsibility to someone else?
Kate's like, did you ever consider not being the showrunner of this show? Just let somebody else do it?
Like I'll be in my room like crying, laughing. In my office, just like crying, laughing.
By the 7th Finley and Sophie scene, we were all crying, laughing. This is so bad.
I mean, you know, we had Gigi in like various spots. You're sort of waiting to see like on set and like who does she connect with?
Because I would laugh with Sepida. I'm like, Sepida, you've blown through the whole cast at this point.
do you think they didn't know how into Danny and Gigi the fans were gonna be? Like, how could they not know that? Like, I remember seeing fans wanting these two together before the trailer for season 2 came out.
In the writer's room, we call single people our utility players. And so, like, we talk about the ways in which they can kind of, like, work as drama.
Wow. I remember in one of my episode recaps saying I felt like the show viewed these characters as mechanisms for drama rather than real, fully fleshed out, 3-dimensional real people. And here's Marja confirming that is absolutely the case, at least for the single people.
You know, those single people can just kind of like, you can just use them to move story in different ways.
Those single people, you can kind of just use them to move stories. Holy, this is crazy. This is the season we just watched. A bunch of utility players moved around on a chessboard to create drama.
This one is from Coco. Hi, Pants ladies. You guys killed the live show last week. Please do it again.
Coco.
Marja, this is for you. I feel like the reference to Jenny's death was weak.
Damn, Coco, you did not beat around the bush. total weak sauce. Also, all of the Shane test stuff, 2 thumbs down. Besides the part of the interview we're going to discuss later in this video about lack of fun the characters have in season 2, this part of the interview is one of the most discussed topics online. This topic about why isn't Jenny referenced more?
Do you think your characters would talk about her?
Yeah, I do.
In
Absolutely.
like what context? Like
in
what context?
Like, in what context would you be talking about Jenny? What? What do you mean? In what context would you be talking? Like, in what context would you ever talk about your dead former roommate, lover, and good friend? A lot of the fans were frustrated with how clueless Marja-Lewis Ryan seemed to be when it came to Shane and Jenny's relationship.
I imagine that they like come and go spaces, and that like, you know, there are spaces where like some people from the past are like more alive for them. We haven't like stumbled into that yet for Shane.
Maybe Shane should stumble into a storyline. Hey, if she had a decent storyline, maybe some shit might come up. Eileen Shaken, the creator of the L Word, told Marja-Lewis Ryan she could write Gen Q as if season 6 did not happen. Maybe ignoring season 6 wasn't such a good idea. And maybe if she hadn't ignored the season 6 storylines, the reboot would have made more sense to fans.
I suppose, like, we never even comment on, hey, remember when Jenny did this, or do you remember when that happened?
Remember when Marja-Lewis Ryan went on the Pants podcast and it totally blew up?
What I struggled to figure out, and like the reason why the show is like not quite as great as I want it to be, is because there's story on top of the fact that there's a relationship status story. So I think if I just delete that top line, I think that like we'll have a show that you can talk about Jenny.
What? I went back and listened to this part several times, pausing in between. I think what Marja-Lewis Ryan is saying here is, next season, if instead of putting these fresh new storylines on top of the storylines fans are already familiar with from the OG series, I won't do that. I'll focus on the original ones, and that'll leave room to make great television. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, it ain't gonna hurt. And I gotta be honest, I feel like if the fresh storylines had been better, we would have been more receptive to them.
Hi there. I get that the OG and Gen Q are not the same thing, but I really miss how much fun all the characters used to have on the old show. No one, and I mean no one, has any damn fun on this reboot. Aside from...
I love it. Okay, the fact that they all laughed at this, Marja included, that really endeared me to her a little bit more. You only laugh if you get the joke, and you only get the joke if you recognize this ain't a joke, it's the cold hard truth.
I don't think Shane's had fun.
Poor Kate Minnick, she didn't get to have any fun this season. She's sitting over there going, could Shane get like any fun? Could Shane get like a little fun? Maybe go to a comedy club, something, anything.
Yeah,
Great.
we hear your note. We accept it.
We hear your note. We accept it. I don't know why people are giving this podcast so much hate. They're all being really good sports about this.
What do you think of this? Do you want the characters to happen?
yeah,
Or you like that?
Leisha's like, what do you think, Marja? Do you like want the characters to be all?
But the other problem
Got
is
it.
the wrench
Yeah.
thrown in with the Sophie Finley Danny thing, because they were all
Right.
friends.
Hello? You think that whole Danny, Finley, Sophie love triangle maybe might have caused some long-term ensemble friend group problems? Leisha, are there too many characters? All 3 of them in unison. Yes, of course, yes. What is that? If everybody knew there were too many characters, why the did you create so many characters?
Like you would already go back to first year and go, Oh, if I knew all that I
I
know
would've
now.
done
I
this,
would
this,
do
and this different.
I would do all 18 episodes differently. You know what I mean? Like,
This was also a hugely controversial part of the interview. I judge that a lot of fans were surprised by this. I mean, not to be but I was operating under the assumption that Marja-Lewis Ryan did her best and, she did what she wanted and it didn't cut the mustard. What? That show? That's not the show I would do if I could go back.
that I learned.
Well, then does
is,
that
like,
mean you have any sort of regret ever?
Leisha, I think regret's a little harsh, Kate. Kate's like, sorry, I can't think of any other word that would be appropriate to explain this situation. At one point towards the second half of the podcast, Ryan gets asked what becoming the showrunner of this show meant to her. And she goes off on this really kind of nice tangent where she says that part of her goal with the show and what was really important to her was to give queer people representation that, didn't necessarily look like her, a white woman. But the problem is, and we know this now, partly because Otto Straddle confirmed this, they did a roundtable with some of their Black writers, and they confirmed that there was only one Black writer on season 2 of Gen Q. The problem is, she wanted to give more people representation, but she wasn't willing to go all the way with it and ensure that it was high quality representation by making sure there was more than one Black writer in the writer's room. She specifically mentions wanting to give trans people representation, and I gotta say, yikes, Micah, not really a priority for this show, I don't think, in any way, shape, or form. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Where's the representation for trans lesbians? She specifically states that each season she wants to move one notch further on the progress scale or something like that. And, her notch for season 2 was a sex scene with Micah and Maribel. Now, at first, this seems like a noble goal. People watching the show who are trans men or who have a disability, they will get to see themselves represented on screen in a sexual manner. But I think part of the problem with this relationship was the fact that it was serving Marja's activist goals. She doesn't care if Leo Shang and Jillian Mercado have chemistry. They were gonna fall in love with each other no matter what. I give Marja-Lewis credit for wanting to make the show better. I do. But even that aspect was kind of like, you could have done better. I had thought the online talk about Marja-Lewis's theater background, making her possibly not the best candidate for showrunner, was just speculation. What I did not know was that Marja was the one who put that out there herself.
Well, because my background, I think, is in theater, a lot of, what I know about, intimacy and, what I know about, character don't totally connect to a show that requires, a certain kind of aesthetic and, a certain kind of bigness.
So she really kind of summed up the major problems for us herself. She tells us she wasn't as interested in the OG storylines. She admits there are way too many characters. She tells us she's much more focused on representation than the quality of said representation. And in the end, she wraps it all up with the "I'm a theater person" bow. But I do have to say, I was really surprised at how much I liked this interview. And I thought fans maybe went a little overboard with their reaction to this. I think Marja-Lewis Ryan knew she was going to have to answer some difficult questions coming into this interview, so I give her credit for coming on and not dodging any of those questions, and in her own way admitting that the Gen Q reboot has been imperfect. All right, let me know your thoughts on the interview. I left a link to it in the description. Definitely subscribe to the Pants Podcast if you haven't yet. They are putting out great content. We need to support them as a community. All right, I'm Amanda. This is my Really Gay YouTube channel, and I'm sending you love until the next video.